Yeah, let's do it. So if you could do the countdown for me, just to force it over to you.
3, 2, 1.
Well, really welcome you guys back to the church planting journey that we've been on, and we really want to welcome everybody who's able to join us today. And today I have joining with me two amazing young men, and they're actually down in Campbelltown, I think in one of the hotspots in Sydney, but not only a hotspot in terms of where we're at with COVID-19, but also in terms from a spiritual sense, from a missional sense in terms of church planting. So can you just maybe share with us, guys, where have you come from in terms of church? What has been your most recent church kind of experience as a team, shall I say?
Yeah, so I'll start. I'm Josh and this is Azora. So we've been meeting in Newcastle CBD ever since the restrictions have eased up a little bit. And so what church looks like for us is we meet at a cafe on Saturday. The owner's been really kind to us to give us a space there for free that we can use that holds up to around 50 people. So yeah, he lets us use that on a Saturday. We meet there, we have church, we go through the Bible. Right now we've just started the emotionally healthy church book. And so we're journeying through that together. And then afterwards, we all grab lunch together. We either go to the park or we go for a walk, and we kind of just make a day of Saturday together in fellowship with one another.
Fantastic. This sounds like an amazing story, and we're kind of diving right into the heart of the CBD. But I'd love to go back, say about 18 months ago or maybe 2 years ago, because the seeds for this church plant concept was sown much earlier. So can you take us back to the church that kind of gave rise to this vision, and tell us, what were you doing in that particular church? So what was the church, and where did you get this vision from?
Yeah, so the church that Josh and I both were committed to was Avondale College Church, and we were theology students doing our practical there in the tailor end of our study. And so at Avondale College Church, they gave us a lot of opportunities to be leaders. And I know for Josh, he got to lead in the space on the pulpit, and he got to preach. And we were both also residential RAs on campus. And so it was important for us to be present in the spiritual sense on the campus church. And myself, I was given the opportunity to lead what is the life group ministry for that year in 2019. And so in that capacity, we were both able to grow, we were both able to develop. And then the opportunity of church planting arose in that theological mentoring session, I should say. And the senior pastor there, it was Nimrod. He sat all the Theo students that he was mentoring down, and he said that Avondale College Church was interested in church planting, and that the intricacies were unknown. There's a lot of things that hadn't been connected yet, but the missional back was always there. And so if there was anyone willing to do it, perhaps they could raise their hands or let them know at the time. And so Josh and I went away from that experience, just wrestling with it, thinking about it. And we both had separate experiences to accept it. But yeah, that's the introduction to how we made our decision to, hey, we really want to be missional. We really want to do this whole church planting thing. And yeah.
No, really cool. So let's go back to that small group ministry that you're involved in. What were some of the things which led to the success of that? Because I've heard, I hope maybe it's rumors, but I've heard that it was very, very successful. That a lot of groups started, and just tell me what was it that it enabled this vision to go from an idea concept to a reality? Because of lots of churches want to start small group ministry, but it's not always easy. So in college church, how did that work?
Yeah, I think in college church, the success really was on the leaders themselves. I think a lot of the attention is probably put into, how awesome the program or the group looks like, or how many people we have. But when you develop your leaders and you actually take care of the group leader themselves, they themselves actually produce more leaders in the groups. And that's the entire discipleship model, I believe, where Jesus poured into Peter, James, and John, and then throughout the 12, and then through the 12 to the rest of the world. And I think there was no real secret. It was that we took care of the small group leaders and made sure that they were healthy. And what I mean by healthy, like we weren't burning them out. There was 10 weeks in which the life groups were running, and then there was a break. And then there was another 10 weeks. And it worked as a semester block. And I think the beauty of that was that, you get to have sustainability, longevity in your leaders. And I think that's what really made it a success. But other than that, it was just having great leaders who are passionate about Jesus, passionate about people. And I think that's really what took it off. There's no credit to me, there's credit to them all.
Fantastic. And Josh, I also understand that at College Church in 2018, 2019, roughly around that time, there was an incredible number of baptisms in the order of about 20, 23, 28 baptisms, something like that. And I believe that you were a part of that. So, how did that come about?
Yeah, I think when we think about it, it kind of goes back to what Azora said. It's the college church pastors have done a phenomenal job about just empowering people in their leadership and basically bringing out the best in what their leaders bring to the table. And a lot of the baptisms that actually took place at college church weren't actually done by the pastors themselves. They were done by students there, lay people at the church, and just heaps of other people, simply because the pastors there were able to say, you know what, I actually don't need to do this Bible study with this person because someone else is better suited to them. Or, hey, I see this in this leader, so I want to help this leader unlock this within themselves. And it was basically all spirit-led in the sense that God empowered them. But yeah, the pastors were just able to hand off authority, and because they were able to hand off authority, they reaped more because of, in one word, their humility. So yeah, it was a big culture change, because it was strange to see students in the baptismal font with other students, but it became the norm at the church, and it was a good norm, and it's something that I think we in Azora really, really resonated with, because we'd love to see more people fulfilling the Great Commission that aren't necessarily ordained pastors, but people that are faithful to God, and because ultimately that's what He wants.
I mean, traditionally baptisms can only be performed, if I could use that very, classical word, performed by ordained pastors. So how do you feel about this idea of, just ordinary disciples baptizing people? How do you relate to that?
Yeah, I love the idea, because I don't think that there's anything ordinary about being a disciple. Just because someone has a theological degree and is ordained doesn't make them any better than the average layperson. All of us are children of God, and when we get to heaven, God's not going to be like, all right, because you're an ordained pastor, you get this, and just because they're a layperson, they just get this. I don't think God operates like that. I think the currency of heaven is faithfulness. And I think if we can see more faithful people fulfilling the gospel commission, which is to make disciples, to baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and to teach them what Jesus taught us, then yeah, it will be an amazing day for our church, and it's something that I'd love to see more of.
And it's interesting that the Great Commission says, go therefore and make disciples, baptizing them. And so literally Jesus has given the authority to every disciple, every follower of Jesus, to make disciples and baptize as well, and to teach, which is truly amazing. And of course the promise of His presence as well. It's incredible to think about that. But coming back to you, Azora, well, both of you really. So you've been in this environment at college church with Pastor Nimrod and Alex. and they've been raising up leaders. And you have really, you've seen the incredible opportunity. It's been a blessing to you. So what principles of leadership, empowerment, and development will you then take in your own context and church plant? Because this is such an important thing to develop and make more missional leaders. So if we could go for that, the preaching, you make 3 points or whatever. What sort of 3 or 5 points for leadership development will you take in your own church plants?
Yeah, I think there were really 3. I think I can only think of 2, but I think the third one will come to mind. But
Two's fine.
Well, initially, what was really instilled in us was the heart of humility as a leader, and that's really tough to see because in every sense, being a leader is someone who's in the front, someone who's raising up everybody, and when we watch movies, the leader is the character. But in every sense, when Jesus says, to go down is to become first, or to come last to come first, the meek shall inherit the earth, and things like that. When we have, as a leader, a teachable heart, we are more open to the leading of the Spirit, open to the leading of one another, and open to leading ourselves, really. And then when we achieve a teachable heart that's willing to learn, willing to improve, willing to take on feedback sometimes, I think that's the greatest lesson that we learned, was that, we take that even into our season right now. We're just like, we may not know everything. We're definitely out of our depth, unqualified, if you may say, to church plan and lead in this type of sense. However, we want to every single day have a teachable heart that is open to the leading of the Spirit, open to the leading of our leaders and our mentors, and
No, that's amazing.
Yeah, and then the second one was just to be faithful to what you were doing. And I guess practically for me, even though I felt out of depth in leading the life group ministry or the small group ministry at College Church, I still had to remain faithful to that calling. And even right now, the thing that the why behind why we stepped out to church plant was that we wanted to be faithful in what God was putting on our hearts. Mm-hmm. And so being an effective leader, you don't have to know it all. You don't have to be 100% qualified to read every single book or listen to podcasts. But I think when you have an open heart that is teachable and that you're faithful to what God is calling in your life, I think that's a huge stride in being a highly effective leader.
Yeah, if the third thing, it came to my mind, it must have missed his mind, but Fantastic. It came to my mind, is I think what College Church really taught us, above humility, as well as humility and being faithful, is the idea that leadership is influence. And when we say that, it means that, Nimrod, Alex, and Michaela, they all taught us that it's not about getting your way, and it's not about having an idea and running with the idea and not listening to what anyone else has to say. They kind of taught us that if leadership is the influence that you have with one another and have with the people that you have around you, then it means that you listen to them. It means that you hear them out. It means that you actually say, you have the humility, if for lack of a better word, to actually say, hey, maybe idea isn't as good as it could be. What if I invite other people into the equation and see what they have to say? And I think it's when you have that understanding that leadership is influence that you have with other people, your ideas get better because you have the ability to open it up to other people, to hear their thoughts, and it grows and challenges you in amazing ways. And so, I think they're the 3 main things that College Church taught us about leadership.
Fantastic. So I want to go to that kind of moment. You're sitting there with all of the other theology students, and Nimrod has just burst this surprise of when the invitation, shall I say, the opportunity to church plant. I mean, in a lot of established churches, if you mention the word church plant, it's a topic of concern, maybe, that we'll lose members, we'll lose tithe, we'll lose, good leaders. But in this situation, when Nimrod mentioned the idea, it sounds like you were drawn to the idea. So what was it about, and it's not just Nimrod and Alex, but they're great guys, but what was it that just really drew you to say, hey, I really want to be involved in this?
Yeah, well, I'll answer that then. I think the thing that really drew Azora and I is, in one word, in one sentence, being faithful to God. For us, we had no idea what it would look like to church plant. We both had other job opportunities lined up. Me down in Victoria, being a pastor there, Azora up in Mackay. We both had things lined up for us, but when we got the call for this, we both had a burden that God was wanting to do something great within this church plant, and potentially, just inject some new life into the church. And so we were really excited at the opportunity to one, be faithful to God, and two, to be a part of that change. And it's not something that we had to consider personally as well. We both had very committed relationships at the time, which are now, we both have fiancés. And so we had to consider them as well, because they're both primary teachers. Between them, they had around 8 job offers around the country. So they're pretty spectacular in and of themselves. And it was amazing to see their hearts change and transform, and just really be inclined to do this as well. And because they saw the value in this church plant, it made us see the value even more, because they were willing to give up the job offers that they had in order to be a part of something that we were wanting to do. And so it kind of just inspired us more and more to put our best foot forward, to step out in faith, and ultimately follow what God has been putting on our hearts.
Wow. So
I was just going to add on to this, the whole, when Nimrod bursted this idea and what was going through Azora, fourth year's fear's mind, was that I remember my mind was ticking, and it was just, at first, every instinct is kind of like, you're going to be church planting, but we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what type of career they'll shape out, or the finances, all those logistic things. And I remember my mind ticking, and even though I may have had questions, my heart was really drawn to the very missional sense of the nature of church planting. And I love that in a local church, you were able to nurture nurture and disciple the people who are already there. But I love the sense of, being able to, go through the book of Mark, as we did, the Gospels, and learn about how we can, the opportunities of where's the need in this community, really having a missional heart from the get-go. Where's the need? What's the opportunity where we can feel as a church in this context? And what's something that they need that we can provide? And I just love that entire idea. And then, as Josh said, it wasn't an easy decision, and we didn't just, pack everything and go and say yes in a single day. They did take, weeks and stuff like that. But in the end of the day, as Josh said, it was just, we felt called to it, and we wanted to be faithful to that. And I just think of, when Jesus asked his disciples, and they're sitting there with their nets and they're fishing, and they're like, follow me. And then he just, and so that's what was my mind at that time. So.
And that's amazing. So here's a time where you can burst the idea upon us in the interview, in the video, and the question is this. So paint us a picture of what the church plant in the Newcastle CBD is going to look like. But also, I have a bit of inside information, which is always useful. And that is that you guys don't just have the vision of one church plant in Newcastle. You're actually thinking of church plants right around Australia as well. So give us that picture. Paint us a picture of what this is going to look like.
Yeah, no worries. So basically, to paint a picture, we want to start by establishing by answering 3 questions, and it's what are we doing, why are we doing it, and how are we doing it. And so this is something that we took our team through so that we can all be on the same page, all be clarified and unified in what we're doing. And so basically what we're doing, the answer to that is, what's our purpose? And so the answer to that question is, it's our vision statement. It's being present in our cities, sharing the life-changing, transformational love of Jesus. That's our purpose. That's what we're about. That's what we're aiming to do ultimately in Newcastle and in the other church plants that we eventually plan. It's ultimately to share the love of Jesus and to have a presence within the city. The next question, why are we doing it? It's, as Azora said before, it's ultimately because we're just trying to be faithful to God. We believe that God's put this on our heart, and there's nothing else really on our minds to do except be faithful to this. And the next question is, how are we doing it? It's basically one step at a time. We're figuring it out one step as we go. And so they're the I guess initial contextual questions to ask. But basically, yeah, as you said, Sven, our goal is to have 12 church plants across the country. The reason 12, 12 disciples, 12 tribes of Israel. Nah, I'm just joking. But the idea of why we want 12 is we'd love to see a church planted off of us in every state and conference, simply so that we can see this DNA of reproducibility, leadership training, because something that we really are instilling and doing this year in our church is we haven't launched publicly yet, and we have 14 leaders with us already. 14 people are part of our church plant, and the reason why we haven't launched yet is because we've spent this whole year really just pouring into our leaders, equipping them with leadership principles, giving them resources to read, to understand, to go through. We read the Gospel of Mark so that we can actually understand who this Jesus guy is, what does he actually want his people to do, why does he want his people to do it, how does he want his people to do it as well. And so since we journeyed together through that with our team, now we're going through the Emotionally Healthy Church book. And the idea of that is to really instill them with the understanding of what it means to be an emotionally healthy leader. The thesis of the book there is that you can't be spiritually mature and emotionally mature. You can't be spiritually mature if you are emotionally immature. Sorry, a bit of my rambling there. But basically, it's the idea of, if we don't have a solid inside, a solid heart, a solid mind, and we don't have a firm foundation for our soul, then we'll eventually fall and stumble. So we really are wanting to establish our leaders this year, and so that next year when we launch that, we'll have a team that is on fire. We'll have a team that's prepared. That's a team that's ready to take on responsibility, and a team that's just keen for the gospel. And so for us, our goal is to instill and pour into our leaders. And as we go along, we want to take other leaders under our wing so that we can kind of pour into them what we've learned about church planting. And so for us, it's not about getting to a certain number and we split. For us, it's let's continually develop leaders so that we're continually having a culture of sending people out so that they're ready for the work. They're ready to be faithful to what God's called them to do. And so if we can produce that culture of, sending out, multiplication, being faithful to Jesus, and if we can send them out to all the different conferences around Australia, and they themselves carry that DNA of multiplying, then they can multiply in their own context, and we can see this culture of faithfulness and gospel-centered worship within our church. And I think that will be amazing.
That's incredible. So talking about numbers, so are you aiming for like 72 team members and 144,000 baptisms? That's all good. Really, really amazing. So in terms of, the goal is really you're training up team members to go out and plant these churches. So you guys yourselves are not going to plant all 12 churches. You're actually training up people to take on this vision and carry the baton forward.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, amazing. Zora.
Yeah. Like just bouncing off what Josh was saying, I think that the very essence of what although we would, we're not trying to say that this is completely going to change everything and we're just going to flip our entire church around. However, we would just love to see growing communities that are for everyone, that are designed for your local person who's perhaps just watching the footy and hears about what's this thing happening over here on a Saturday, and churches are designed for him or his family and things like that. And also just when we're talking about growing leaders, we'd love to see growing young leaders, and growing young leaders in our church, and having them with the heart to be discipled and their heart to disciple others and to be missional. And that's what we love to see. And I just wanted to speak into that. And, and as you said, we'd love to have 12 church plants across Australia and across the cities in Australia. And we can't do that by ourselves. Well, most definitely not. And so when we grow leaders, they're an extension of what we're trying to achieve, and we can only do that through them.
So if there was somebody watching or joining us today, and that they were kind of deep in their hearts, they thought, I just love to be part of this vision. What message would you share with them personally, as they're considering whether they would like to or are called to join this church planting movement?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the first and most important thing to do is, above all things first, as Jesus says, I was looking through Luke 14 the other day, and it's basically Jesus telling his disciples, count the cost. Count the cost of what it means to actually be a disciple. Me and Azora, with our team members already, we haven't glorified church planting. We haven't romanticized it. We haven't tried to. We've been intentional about not painting, like a gumdrops and ice cream, picture, like it's all roses and there's no battles. Because both Azora and I, we both gave up employment. We had to look for work. We're self-funded, if we could say. And so we want to just, if for someone considering church planting, first we want to say, hey, first count the cost. Are you willing to go through the hard times? Are you willing to go through the grind? Are you willing to potentially give up work, to give up living where you're currently living? Are you willing to sacrifice for the kingdom? I think that's the first thing that we'd suggest and really just tell people to think about. And I think the second thing is, if you're willing and if you're faithful, find the community, get on board with the community, continue to learn, continue to grow. As one of Azora's mottos is to be a lifelong learner, to live to learn. So continue to learn about what Jesus has actually called us to do in church planting, because so often it's just been there's been church plants that have been made just so that it can suit a certain type of worship style for individual people. And I think if you're actually willing to sacrifice to follow Jesus, then you actually have to be willing to then say, all right, if I'm willing to sacrifice to follow Jesus, what does that actually look like? What does he want of me? What does he require of his people? And does it require me having to shift my attitude, to shift my cultural biases, to shift my preconceived ideas of what a church plan is to be, and actually follow what he wants me to do? So I think they're the first two things I would say.
Yeah. I think you touched on this. Just if you feel called to it, be faithful to it, and if you feel that we would love to see an attitude of holding things loosely, as we touched on, being teachable, and we can't stop your faithfulness. If you want to join, just send us a message.
Fantastic. They're really, really good. I guess, Azora, one question that I'd have is this. Why the CBD? Why Newcastle CBD or the CBD of other cities like Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane or whatever? Because you could have chosen a lot of other areas to plant, but why particularly the CBD?
I think the CBD if you think about it, a lot of people don't necessarily they travel there to be there. That's the heart of the state, I guess. And so when people travel there for work or for study, or perhaps when you have a presence in there, you're able to influence them in a spiritual sense. And then they're almost going back home or going back from school and stuff like that, having a wider influence, just because you were present in the hub of the state or where it is. But I think the reason behind it is because we love the CBD. I think it was a context where young people were thriving, and we would love to see the corporate world or business people, the CEOs, and every walks of life, become a Christian Adventist.
Yeah, I think the CBD is where we understand the CBD context. We're city boys, definitely not the country boys. So we understand the city. We understand the busyness, the pace of it, and we know that a lot of young people are attracted to that type of lifestyle too. And so for us, we're like essentially just going where the young people are going, because that's basically our primary audience of who we want to meet. Young professionals, young people, simply because they're the future of the country, they're the future of the church, and they're ultimately the future of the world. So we want to go where the people are, and that's basically the heart behind it.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been really amazing to talk with you today. And this is kind of like the first stage, the very first kind of episode, shall I say, vlog. And look, I would love to be able to join with you further down the track, stage 2, get the next stage of the story. But before we wrap up today, Josh, I was just wondering if you would be able to pray for anybody who's listening, particularly someone may have joined us who's just really drawn to this concept of planting in the CBD, or near them, or in Newcastle, or wherever. But also there may be other people, young people, older people who may be joining us, and they may say, this has inspired me to plant a church in my context. And just wondering if you could pray for those people listening to and joining us today.
Yeah, no worries, I'll do that. Dear Father in heaven, I thank you so much for the opportunity that we have to talk to Sven. I thank you so much that Azora and I have had the platform to be able to share our story. And I just really pray, Lord, for anyone considering church planting that's been inspired. I really just pray that you may guide them and lead them in that space, that Jesus, your Holy Spirit, may fill them, that you may reveal to them the cost of it, what it requires of them, and Lord, let their heart continue to burn on even more so after what you reveal to them. I thank you so much that you're a God of love and grace and mercy, but also a God of purpose and mission. And I really just pray that you may instill that within all of us, especially the people listening now. And we leave them all in your hands. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, guys. We really look forward to hearing more of the journey and having you join next time as well.
No worries.
No worries. See ya.